Join John Barnes, former Liverpool and England footballer. John, very good to see you.
Good to see you too.
The country seems divided about whether or not there is racism in the royal family. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm smiling because I'm looking at the polls saying, have they been unfairly treated by the royal family? That was not what I took from that interview. What I took from the interview is they were unfairly treated by the press. The reason they wanted to leave the country was because of the racism she received by the press. That is not even being discussed. They didn't leave, and they didn't leave the country because of racism in the royal family. They left the country because of racism by the press. Prince Harry said it himself. But the press have absolved, the media have absolved themselves of responsibility by pushing it on the one comment she made about what somebody said in the royal family, and are now saying there's a racist in the royal family. We have to address the fact that the reason they left, the reason she was suicidal, was because of the racism she received day in, day out from the press.
But she also said, but she did also say, I mean, you know, like you, I watched the interview. She also said that there was what she thought was a very unhealthy relationship between the royal family and the press, and that she felt that the royal family did not give her adequate protection in these circumstances.
Well, from the racism from the press.
I mean, absolutely, that was the point one was making. But nonetheless, you've got the press on the one side, but you've also got, you know, essentially the head of state and an institution that this couple who felt they had to flee these shores feels, did not treat them in a proper way.
Why are we putting the press to one side?
I'm not remaining putting it to one side.
So why are we putting it to the side?
John, I'm not putting it to one side.
That's what we've been doing all day. All we've been doing all day is pointing the finger at the royal family when it is the press is the main reason. Now, let's talk about that comment that they actually made. The comment that they made about the colour of the baby. The comment that was made was that the colour of the baby, they were concerned about the colour of the baby and how that would look. How that would look to who? How that would look to the British subjects, because they know that the British subjects would not necessarily like a baby with dark skin. They know that the British public would much prefer a white baby. So why don't we talk about the fact that the British public will be racially biased towards a darker baby? We're not talking about that either.
But do you really believe that a majority of the British public? I mean, I find this. I mean, obviously, I like to believe that, you know, within my circle and my friends, nobody would be biased in that way. But you still think we've got a huge amount of work in this country to do on this?
You think you speak to black people, they'll tell you something different. And I tell you what, no one has picked up on the fact that they have said. Harry himself has also said to protect his family from racism. He is leaving Britain to go where? To go to America, where we in England feel is the most racist country in the world. So why are they leaving Britain to escape racism by going to America? Yeah. When Steve Coogan talked about introspection, we have to be introspective in this country to think, how do we really feel? And if the British public is asked, will you prefer a blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby or a baby with dark skin? We know what the answer will be. So let's not pretend that it's just the royal family who may feel that, well, how are we going to reconcile the fact that the baby may be dark? This is how we all feel, and until we're introspective within ourselves, nothing will change. We'll
John, this is an incredibly important conversation. I'm going to pick up with you again in just a minute or two, and Caroline and Becky will still be with us too, I hope. See you in a second. Hello, welcome back. John Barnes is still with me. John, we were just talking about the extent of racism in the UK. You think that it is still a hugely pernicious cancer here. How do we bring about real change?
Well, first of all, it's more implicit, insidious and covert than it is in America. It's much more obvious. And of course, the journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first one. And the first step is to say, I am unconsciously biased, be it race, be it sex, be it gender, be it sexuality. And the fact is that most of us are, but we don't want to admit it. And of course, in this particular case, there's so many instances whereby it was so obvious where people are still denying it. Take the headline straight out of Compton. And people are pushing back on that all day, saying it's got nothing to do with race. It's to do with the fact that she's from 10 miles from Compton. Come on, unless we're going to be introspective, as Steve Coogan says, and we're going to look at ourselves, nothing will change. But unfortunately, what we do in this country is we wait for someone to get caught, point the finger at him, says everything is okay, apart from the Liam Neesons, the Peter Beardsleys, and now whoever that royal is, who then said, we're worried about the shade of the baby.
I'm going to come back to you in a second, John. I mean, one of the things we have seen in recent months and years is both main parties struggling to eliminate racist talk, in some cases actual racists from their parties. Why do you think the political system has struggled with this to this extent?
I think it's a good question as to why it has. I certainly am very conscious that on both a local and national level that the parties have to do better, making sure that they expel people that make racist comments, that tweet racist things, and they all need to be better at it, to be quite frank. I'm conscious that in my local association we have had to expel people, and, you know, it's been shocking when you've done it, but actually it's the right thing to do. But the same holds true. I just sometimes look at the sexism that you see in political parties, still ongoing, both sides of the political divide. And I do think that we all need to have better procedures to make sure that it's easier to report, it's easier to get action taken, and that action is swift. I think that's one of the really key things. It has to be fast.
I mean, one of the things that you'll have seen today is that Jane Ozanne, who has been advising the government on LGBT plus issues, has stood down because she says that the government's created a hostile environment for LGBT plus. Is this, I mean, you know, your committee is all over this issue. Do you recognise what she says about a failure of the government?
Well, we are indeed doing an inquiry at the moment about the Gender Recognition Act, one that's had more responses than any other select committee inquiry. More than 2,000 people have contributed to that. But we also had a debate in Parliament, I think it was only yesterday, about conversion therapy. And I want to see the government legislate, and legislate quickly, to have an outright ban on conversion therapy. We have to recognise that we want to welcome and accept people whatever their gender, whatever their sexuality. And it seems to be incredibly difficult for the government to move as fast as the country is.
John, I mean, we've talked about unconscious bias, and we've all had to sort of look at our own attitudes. Is this something that in some areas of your life you've had to look at?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a light-skinned, middle-class Jamaican from a fairly elite family in Jamaica who, when I was growing up in Jamaica till I was 13 years old, I would look at black people who are darker than me with bigger lips and who are working class, and I would think I'm superior because of what life has shown me. And I accept that, so therefore I work in changing that. So I would never say I don't discriminate. I am not sexist. If I see a female lineswoman, linesperson, and a male linesperson, my initial thought before I actually see the capabilities of them is that the man is going to be better. But because I've accepted that, I can work on changing it. Most people don't do that. They wait for people to get caught, and you're talking about even expelling people from the party. Expelling people from the party are the obvious ones who get caught. The obvious racists aren't the problem. The ones who don't think they're racist are the problem, and the ones that you can't prove. And that is the biggest part of racial discrimination, sexism, homophobia, is what you can't prove. And why you can't prove it is because we're very adept at hiding it. And because laws, you can't pass laws to change people's perceptions. People have to automatically want to change their own perception, and they have to admit that it exists within them. But we're not prepared to do that.
And
we're just prepared to